Getting very comfortable, standing or sitting or lying down, whatever is for you.
Chris says, everyone got their ice buckets for their hands before practice?
Somewhere on YouTube, there is somebody teaching that class right now. Dip your head into the ice bucket.
Qigong Ice Bucket Challenge.
Qigong Ice Bucket Challenge. I forgot about the Ice Bucket Challenge. That was a thing. Letting your whole system come to center. Softening your neck so that the head is released upward. Xu Ling Ding Jin, that sense of this floating lightness. Softening your shoulders. Make sure they don't soften forward or backward. But like all of our practices, as we are releasing the tissues, we're releasing it outward. Allowing the elbows to become heavy. The hands are very soft. The softness of the hands and the arms will become primary as we're moving through the set. Releasing the chest, not pushing it down, simply allowing whatever was holding it up before to fall away. The upper back opens, shoulder blades sink, and all of that sinks down toward the belly. Releasing your lower back as best that you can. Again, this can be helped by sitting appropriately in your chair, softening this joint. If you find yourself leaning back, then the only way to correct that is to somehow round, placing pressure here. If you're too far forward, then you try to arch your back in some way to sit up straight, and that also hurts. But if we can begin to soften the hips here, just letting them go, releasing the glutes. This joint allows us forward. Make sure you're sitting on a high enough chair for your size. And then it's easier for the weight to drop straight down to that point in front of the sitting bone. And then all of the tissue between, including your back, has the opportunity to let go. But if you're leaning or doing something strange, it doesn't give your body the chance to soften. Your lower back and your belly both releasing. Softening your hips this direction as well, so you're not hanging onto your legs in any way. Your lower legs and your feet are soft. Everything drops through you, releasing the weight to the chair, to the ground. And some aspect of your awareness sinking into the earth beneath you, as though you have roots extending from your feet and from where you're sitting down into the earth. Not pushing chi down, just letting it fall. And when you're ready, Softening your shoulders and your hands, stimulating that point at the very top of the head. And a reminder to anyone who is joining us as a beginner who isn't quite certain of the set yet, please do say something in the chats. Let us know that you're here, and I will change the level of detail that I teach through the set. Feel free to adjust this depending on your hairdo, or if you have any sensitivity on your scalp. You do want to make sure that you include a line from the corner of the head here, all the way back, from this stomach 8 point all the way back. If you tend toward migraines, as I know at least one of you gets, then of course make sure that you include all of this line as well, this gallbladder channel. And if you find yourself with a stiff neck very often, going over the very top of the head toward the back is very helpful. Always make sure your arms feel comfortable before you start the next set. Notice that my thumb is emphasizing a release along this edge, the end of the skull along here. Warming all along the edge of the occiput. Feels good. Again, make sure that your shoulders are soft and released. And a reminder about the level of pressure. We're sinking just below the surface of the skin. If you ever study photos of our skin, this entire organ on the surface of our body, most of what we see on the outside is actually dead tissue. And there's maybe 50, maybe 150, depending on your health, layers of cells between the next layer where life actually happens, where fluid moves, where your immune system is bubbling and jumping around. And it's into that layer and even beneath that a bit that we want to sink, which requires gentleness. If you were to push very hard, clearly it just pushes and empties out that space. So we want to stimulate movement into it, not push it away. And so as you soften your hands, become more delicate and aware of what's going on, gently releasing this space just beneath the skin. These days, our immune system is more and more important to the average person. It's discussed more and more openly in regular media. We want to become aware that the health of our skin and circulation just beneath is vital to that. Even the life living on your skin. The level of moisture in your skin makes a difference. Be gentle and nourish yourself.
Chris asks if you recommend using a skin moisturizer.
I recommend allowing your skin to remain hydrated and healthy. I think that the word moisturizer is a general term that could include anything that's from water to pure petroleum. And so I think that every person's skin type is different, and every part of your body probably requires a different kind of substance, if it requires a substance at all, to help retain and to nourish its capacity to moisturize. And so it's one of those questions that is between you and your dermatologist and your God. And so it's a hard question to answer, so I can't recommend anything. Please make sure it's not tested on animals. That's if you want to do a favor to me. What we're focusing on more is our body's capacity to hydrate from within, through circulation, through nourishment and warmth. And so we have to make sure, of course, that we are hydrated through food and through rest as well. But that's our emphasis for this set. So if you find a good moisturizer, feel free to put it down in the comments. Oops, circling around the eyes. As I do this movement, helping to soften and open this area in the center of the forehead, I like to settle my thumbs just on that Tai Yang point that will work later. It's both a nice anchor and pivot point, but also gets a little bit of extra stimulation. And again, for those of you that have a migraine, if you have other sensitive spaces along here, I know everybody has a spot that tends to irritate them. You might want to get a little extra movement in the area by allowing that to become the pivot point for these movements. Just a reminder for good posture. If you were with us when we discussed softening the torso to allow the breath to move freely, Please recall that. Most of these, again, 36 times both directions. Releasing the jaw. Keeping the shoulders soft, the elbows released, the breath free. Remember that with each of these movements, as we help release the body, we have a sense of the intention and the direction that that release will allow. Half of the martial arts qualities from Tai Chi come from simply knowing the direction that you're letting go. So in this case, the jaw releases down and forward as it softens. And then releasing just in front of the ear. Again, keeping this point and this hinge of the jaw released forward. Both directions. There are actually 3 acupoints right in this area that we're stimulating open. So allow the movement to sink in. And again, just for the friends that have a tight jaw, you can also move a bit forward toward the nose along the cheekbone and open and close your jaw. And there should be, as you open the jaw all the way, a point that your finger is pushed out of it. And as you close your jaw, your fingers fall into a hole. This is the stomach point. And if this is the last point we were doing, we're just in front of that. Helping to relieve that space as well. I know that jaw tension is common for at least a couple of you. I've gotten a lot of questions about it. Again, you're not pushing in hard. You're simply softening that delicate tissue and the empty spaces. Wonderful. And then the same, that empty space just behind the earlobe, that end of the ear, between the jaw and what becomes the throat and the neck. There's a hollow space there. It might be sore for you. Same thing, crack your jaw very slightly, allow it to release down and forward, and gently warm and soften that area. And earlier when we were working the back of the neck, and at the end of this ear series when we're tapping the back of the head, that point here, just in the space where it's on the outside of the muscles that come up vertically along the neck, and where this bundle of tissue comes up and touches the back of the skull, this occiput region, just between those two, there's a little hollow space. Gallbladder 20, the wind pool, because the wind likes to gather there. And those are places as well that you want to emphasize releasing if you tend to have jaw pain. Those, again, are also especially good for migraines. I'm getting a lot of questions I'm hoping that I can respond to. So from there, let's go ahead and release up and down. Remember that it can be good to lightly tug on your ears as you soften around the edges and warm the earlobes, helping to open these tissues. And again, keeping your jaw slightly open helps to relieve some of the pressure here. And as a reminder, there are two ways to tap your fingers against the back of the head. One is simply like this, which might feel nice while the ears are compressed. It's called pounding the heavenly drum because it should have a nice echoing quality to it, stimulating the auditory sensors deeper. And you can also do this, where the index finger rests on top of the middle finger and let it slip off as you push down, and it strikes with a bit more force. Hopefully you can hear that. And so you allow that pressure to strike into that gallbladder 20 point that I was pointing out earlier. Gallbladder 20 cave, I should say. And then especially if you tend to suffer from congestion in the ears, again, this helps to relieve jaw tension. It's often very helpful with migraines. Additionally here, I wanted to save toward the end of this set, a number of people experience a great deal of tension or soreness beneath the jaw and throat here. And you can gently rub the back of your hand under that point. And traditionally, it looks similar to the last. This helps to anchor the head a bit. But the main thing that you're doing is softening that space here. If you find that to be particularly tender, as I know a number of you do, you would do that with both hands. It's just another practical version of this. A number of people will have very great sensitivity in the glands here, beneath the cartilage, and up and through here at the base of their tongue. So you want to take the time to soften that as well. You can also let your fingers drag down the center line, and perhaps your thumbs drag just outside of the center line. This is actually part of the kidney channel. The stomach channel is just outside of that. I'm going to spend some time helping to do a bit of massage for the chest and for the breasts. And so this is a wonderful way to begin that process. So releasing down the midline with your fingertips, and the thumbs releasing just outside of that.
We have a question here. I'm not sure when it came through, but where is the base of your tongue?
Oh, the base of your tongue. Well, the base of the tongue is actually all the way down here, but that's probably not what people are talking about. But if you think of the tongue as an extension of a number of aspects of your body, your jaw, your throat, the musculature inside your mouth. And so as we soften the base of the tongue, usually what we're talking about is softening the throat. But because people chronically have so much tension in their tongue, they press it against their teeth constantly, or they're holding it back, or it's very rigid inside their mouth. Very much like a lot of our body, people keep it as a small piece of iron in their body. And so you want to intentionally release that tension. One of the ways that we often will do that is through this practice of softening the base of the tongue so that the tip of the tongue falls upward against the hard palate of the roof of the mouth. Not lifting it by pushing it, but instead softening the base, and so that the tip of the tongue falls up. It's a way of reorganizing the throat and the jaw. And so I haven't talked about it too much in this class, just because usually what people will do is they will then lift their tongue and add more tension to their throat. And so it's its own separate practice. But as an example, in the same way that usually what people do, if I say lift their arm, is they go like this. And they're lifting their arm. And what I have already talked about in this class a number of times is instead the possibility that instead of lifting all of this stuff, you soften this down. This is a counter lever. And so that the shoulder blade sinks, all of this sinks, and your hand just falls up. And so by softening this down, my hand goes, and it's effortless and does not require this shape. Can you tell the difference between this shape and this shape? It's not just here. It changes the shape of my hand, shape of my waist. And how true as well for this space. And so by softening all of this down here in the way that we've been working, the tongue can fall upward and touch the roof of the mouth, which becomes an important shape change for other Daoist practices and Qigong methods. The problem is that when people instead go, oh, my tongue has to be up, and so they go, and they add more tension because they have an idea that their tongue is supposed to be touching the roof of their mouth. instead of recognizing that we are changing this interaction through here. And that takes time and practice. And so I hope that answers the question in greater detail than you ever wanted, which is my favorite way. So let's do a closing. I skipped that. Letting everything sink. Hands rest on the navel. Breath filling the belly. And then my tea filling my belly. I didn't realize that my cup and my socks matched. Look at that. It's like I did it on purpose.
So basically, gently massage the throat and chin a lot, and eventually it will soften and rise itself.
First, defining a lot, because some people can tend to overdo things. And so by a lot, we mean softening and using our hands to release and relieve all of this stuff so that the tissues continuously grow softer and more gentle over time, easier to move. It's possible to do it until you irritate and harass the tissues and they swell up and they become damaged. So don't do that. There's always those people. But the process is learning to soften. And right now we're using our hands as a way to help soften our tissues and relieve tension. But we still have to learn to create movement voluntarily in the same way that with my shoulder, I can release all of this holding pattern through massage and practice, even have somebody else do it to me. But I still have to learn how to create this movement. My nervous system has to learn how to release in this pattern. And the same is true in these small ways, in all of the ways. And so a lot of movement comes through these fascial patterns and this release. When we make empty space in the body, it fills and flows with qi, the way we talk about it with jin. And it's like the fascial system and those empty spaces become wind sails that fill with qi. And then that's what moves you around. Rather than pushing and pulling on the body, we fill with qi. And so that process is what we're aiming for. We learn to release and make space so that movement can come in a different way. And you can practice softening your throat and letting your tongue fall up. It's very common in meditation. Just make certain that you're not holding it up because you will damage your own practice. If it falls back down on its own, let it fall. At some point, if you practice it long enough, the tongue just naturally floats up and all of this opens and it makes a new space down here. And your practice has reached a new level. But if you force it, your practice drops 10 levels. So you have to be careful that you're doing it the right way. Let's go ahead and relieve this area now. So we're going to move outward toward the arms. What I'd like to do is relieve this tissue a little bit, pulling across. Allowing pressure to move because, again, we're releasing and relieving outward. So across the top of the chest and the breast. If you don't have a lot of breast material here, then you can simply allow your fingers to sink into that space between the ribs if your musculature isn't too great. But we do still want to relieve this tension toward the shoulder, aiming toward the fingertips. And we can do the same here between the sternum and any breast tissue that you may have. If you don't have a lot of breast tissue, of course, you can go further. And I would, as we're doing this, like to make the caveat and the warning that there are lots of people in this world that have implants, breast implants in this area of different kinds. And so you want to be very careful here because your body structure is now different. And they're, depending on the direction of the implant and your scar tissue, you may not want to push into them in a certain direction. And so for that, you'd have to talk to whatever surgeon worked with you to know what kind of implant you had and the direction of pressure that's okay to put on it. And then doing the same just beneath the breast. So if this is the breast tissue and I lift it, and I'm relieving across the ribs beneath the breast tissue, this should be easier to soak into. And if you do have a scar here from an implant, then you definitely want to work across that scar to help soften that scar tissue as well. And then the outside of the breast tissue, same thing, relieving outward and down. So if my breast is here and I'm softening this way. Again, I'm not the best example for this, so I have to pantomime. I'm just using my fingertips to relieve that space and soften it. And we'll come back and do more work as we soften down the center line. But I do want to make this effort of easing this aspect of the tissue and the musculature toward the shoulder. And then it's also very important as well to relieve that space beneath the armpit. This is the lymphatic tissue that, of course, radiates into the breast tissue. And so when this is clogged, you want this to be soft, but you don't want to push hard enough that it causes pain, stagnation, inflammation, because these tissues are delicate. And if they're already irritated and you find yourself with small lumps or hard places, then be extra gentle and just encourage movement. And practices, of course, like Qigong and Tai Chi that have this kind of movement with the body where there's pumping and softening open of this space will really help. Top of the shoulder. And for the sake of helping drain any tension through the breast tissue, emphasizing the underside of the arm as you soften. Easing the bend at the elbow. Space just below. Again, you can use your palms if that's more comfortable, or your fingertips locally. Whatever it is that you find the most comfortable and relieving of this tissue, something that helps this tight space to start to soften up and allow space between the fibers, especially if they feel like concrete or steel cables. That's a very unhealthy way for your body to be living. So you want things to open. And then in the elbow itself. I know that culturally, we love the look of tension for some reason. It's a common issue. And oftentimes it can be very difficult when people's identity is tied up in this level of tension, because we think that it makes us look strong, and strength is what we want to give the impression of. Then it's hard for us to let go of those lines of tension because we think that it makes us seem better in some way. It adds to our sense of self and makes us feel more valuable or more easily loved, some idea that we have for that. But allowing that line of holding to soften is much better for the body. I would never want to tell anyone how to live and how to be in their body. I think that people can do whatever they want with their bodies. But do recognize that tension is not strength. And strength, physical or mental or emotional, does not make you more or less of a valuable person. Just be yourself. I'm doing 36 small circles in both directions. And again, if you are somebody who is in need of extra support for their lungs at this time, please include those points that we were working with yesterday. Take your time. That's why it's nice to have access to the old videos if you ever want to go back and hit a special series. Keeping your hands nice and soft. Easing that joint at the base of your thumb, keeping it warm and soft. Emphasizing this movement toward the fingers, and then all the way off the fingertips. And then moving to the other side. Softening outward. If you don't have much breast tissue, then simply relieving all the way across from the sternum to the shoulder, moving in this outward direction. I'm exaggerating it a bit. This is the direction of the release. All of this is opening. You might feel the direction of the muscle fibers. If you have more musculature, they actually travel in this direction.
We have another question. These triple warmer points on the arms are good for calming the nervous system?
They can be. That's not really a way of thinking about it in Chinese medicine. You can stimulate these points and they can be calming for you, depending on what it is that is activating and exciting your nervous system. Remember, when we start to use terminology like this, I'm now moving to the space more in front on the inside of the breast tissue, moving as far across as feels comfortable without running into your breasts. Being very gentle with the breast tissue. So if you hear terms like nervous system or endocrine system or these kinds of things, we're conflating systems that don't necessarily mix verbally. They can be, you can say this sort of overlaps here and this overlaps here, but you do want to know how you're using the terminology. And so if your nervous system is excited and you're tuned up and everything's tight and you're overexcited and it's hard for you to slow down, if that's happening because of excess heat or tension in your body, doing any points can help you with that process because you're relieving local tension and stagnation. I think the triple warmer point, the Sanjiao point 5 on the wrist, that's this point we're talking about. I think that can be very helpful for a number of people. But again, I hesitate to say something like that because every person will be having their nervous system tweaked by something specific. And so the thing that will calm your nervous system down is how you're going about accessing that point. So even here, as I soften this, I could do it in a way that's agitating for my nervous system. Or I could do it in a way that's calming and gentle for my nervous system. It's not the point, it's the method. It's how I'm being. And this whole set should be something that is calming and stabilizing. That's why I harp on it so much. So we've worked all the way around the breast tissue here. Please be gentle with the breast tissue itself. We'll come back to it more directly. But we want to relieve all of this. And if you find hard spaces, either swollen lymph nodes or dense breast tissue, there's even a fibrocystic tendency where the tissue itself starts to become very hard. Be extra gentle. Don't push hard into those places. You're not trying to break them up. You're trying to soften and make space around the tissue. I hope that answered your question about the nervous system.
You're not hot, are you? Do you want to turn down?
I'm pretty warm, but I want you to feel warm.
I feel warm.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I just don't want you to get overheated.
Oh, thank you. Emphasizing this outward direction, and for the breast tissue, especially this area through here. Softening all the way through. Easing and releasing the space. Moving and intentionally, as we're talking about here, relaxing the nervous system, slowing down, becoming soft and easy. Pericardium 6, San Jiao 5, our triple warmer 5. If you want a kind of a fun discussion point, the Western anatomists have made a recent, very important discovery, which is they discovered an entirely new organ system, which is quite remarkable. They've called it the interstitium. This is worth looking up. And it is exactly what has been described in Chinese medicine for millennia, that we call the triple warmer system. And Western medicine for years has looked at that system and said, it doesn't respond to anything. And even when I went to school, in the books, it said, the triple warmer system is very important, but it has no physical counterpart that we can point to until now. So it's wonderful that it's being recognized, not just in function, but now we can actually look at it. And you might find how surprising it is that it relates specifically to this set that we're practicing now. So again, check out a little research on the interstitium, if you like. Very fun. If you ever study medical history, which I've enjoyed doing quite a lot, you can often be surprised at how ancient medicine gets slowly dragged into the limelight and then becomes finally accepted and recognized and then held up as some miracle cure. Recently, it's meditation, mindfulness, which has suddenly been owned by the Western psychotherapists. And hygiene was one that's talked about a lot in traditional Chinese medicine. Ancient Chinese doctors, if you read classic texts, would talk about how what they call warm diseases, these pathogenic things like COVID, they find their way in through your mouth and nose, and so you have to keep your face covered. They couldn't explain why, but they knew it was happening. Exercise as good for mental emotional conditions. When I went to school, I had teachers quite literally tell me that there was no reason to think that exercise would be helpful for something like depression. And now, of course, it's the main thing that we use to treat depression. And it is fascinating how these ancient traditions, they've just been around. Slowly, they're being recognized and appreciated. The interstitium is just one of the latest.
I have a question about that. Where is it located?
Everywhere.
Between the tissues, between the cells.
Fascinatingly, in these same areas that we tend to be working, but it's throughout the whole body. It's too big of a question to give an anatomy lesson while we're trying to massage. I just wanted to point you in the direction if you feel like doing research. Shaking it out.
There's screams and applause.
So with all of this, we're causing relief. You'll notice how this movement that I'm doing in this arm is opening and closing. This is another thing that helps you pump lymphatic tissue in this area. And so all this that we're doing is designed to help relieve and promote circulation. And so you'll find that it's beneficial for this process of the breast tissue, although it's not specifically while we're doing it. But you will want to make sure that you really do take the time to create these kinds of movements, because stagnation of movement in these areas causes stagnation of flow. Our movement is a really big part of our circulatory system. And if we don't move, our circulatory system doesn't move. And that includes our lymphatic system, endocrine system, all of these wonderful systems that are pumping through our bodies. Closing. I can see the comment section here. Between Chris and Del, we get lots of questions. So let's move down now along this way. And so I do, again, want to begin here in the center, warming the sternum. We want this sense of heat to begin radiating outward, as well as sinking in. So we already released a lot of the tension and pressure traveling this way and around the breast tissue. But you can also relieve the breasts themselves, again, depending on how hard your own breast tissue is. If you have kind of fibrocystic breast disease, if you have different kinds of pain at different periods of the month, different periods of your life. And so please do be gentle. So I'll give you a gentle movement that you can try. One is to simply place your palms over your nipples. For me, it looks like this. And then gentle circles. And we were talking about how movement can help with circulation. So your shoulder blades are moving slightly. This isn't a big movement. It's a small movement. I'm exaggerating a little bit to make it easier to see. So a quarter of the size of what I'm doing. But this whole line that we just released is moving. And this helps your hands move so that you're not just trying to move your wrists and your elbows. And you're making gentle circles, the size that feels comfortable to you and your tissue. Because, of course, everybody's going to be different. Even one side will be different from the other. And one day will be different than 2 weeks from then. So please listen to your body. We're going to go both directions. First, up the inside, down the outside, your hands resting in place. And then the other direction, with just enough pressure to allow the fluid and the tissue to become relieved. The sense of warmth that we've been cultivating, radiating into the tissue. Using the softness we just created in the shoulders, this whole line, to generate movement of softness in the breasts. So first, traveling this way, and then traveling this way. And we're going to do it with this larger movement as well. Again, using the centers of the palms with a light touch, traveling up the inside, around the edge of the breast. If you need to move the breast slightly to come around, feel free to do that, and then coming back in. Not hard enough to cause pain, just enough to warm and release the tissue beneath. Notice the relationship with your breath. Allow your heartbeat to slow and become comfortable. And of course, if you are in any period where your breasts are swelling, either because of milk production or just any kind of hormonal shift, please be extra gentle. You do not want to press into tight and swollen breasts. That is not helpful. This is to relieve pressure, not to add it. Both directions. And even humans shaped like me, we have breast tissue that can be eased and relieved. But there are, of course, people that have much more breast tissue than I do. And if you feel comfortable with it, please do feel free to add your recommendations in the comments, either in this class or in any time in the future, about what has helped you. Notice that we're ending these circles. I'm doing 36 in both directions, with this sinking down. And the emphasis is upon down. Softening outward, relieving the sides, sinking down. Feel free to do it as long as you like. If it feels comfortable, you can always add this to your set. And if you have a lot of breast tissue, I highly recommend adding these kinds of movements, any that feel particularly good to you, to your daily practice to keep breast tissue health in a maintained and healthy condition. Because if you are ignoring this area of your body, which I know is common, that they tend to grow hard and tight and problems tend to occur. So please do be as gentle and loving to this section of your body as any other. And then softening the solar plexus. Slowly softening our way down our belly. Interesting aside, since we're talking about women's health, if you ever are a fan of the history of women's health, as I am, this area that we're working on right now is called the hypochondria. You can imagine being forced to wear a very tight corset in hot weather and how that would make you feel. Another interesting thing to look into historically if you're interested.
We have another question.
Mhm.
Do rebounders really work as well as advertised for moving lymph?
I'll save that till the break. Oh, let's also make the belly circles. Progressively larger and larger spirals, eventually covering your entire abdomen, your awareness sinking gently into your belly. We're going to do 36 outward and 24 back in.
Feel free to save this question for later as well. I don't know if you want to explain why we start outward versus inward.
Sure.
It's important to understand.
It's one of those chi theory things. Sending warmth and movement down your legs to your feet. Warming your tailbone, preferably under your clothing. All the way down to the tip of your tailbone, and then softening the top of your glutes. Sending chi all the way down toward your feet. And then the same with the sides of your glutes. Gallbladder 30. this point here, again, just above the kneecap. You know, it's hard to see with my black pants on. Here's my kneecap. If I go up above my kneecap, under the soft space, at the end of this quadricep muscle, there's a soft space there on either side. This is stomach 34. This is another great point for treating breast distension, breast pain. They just have a relationship through this channel. So this is one of those spaces that you can spend time softening. And it actually has an impact upon the health of your breast tissue, which I think is wonderful. "36 times in both directions, allowing that warmth to soak in. Of course, emphasizing this downward direction. Inside of the legs. Gently warming this entire area. If this is one of those spaces that tends to be cold and painful for you, you can do one leg at a time and simply allow the heat to soak into these spaces. And you can do this with any part of your body. Just for the sake of the 90-minute session, we tend to double up. But you feel free to focus in and take special care of certain areas that feel like they're in need. You don't have to follow this class, especially once you know the sequence. You take your own time. You find your own way. Beneath the knee. That soft space in the fold of the knee. Softening and easing tension around those tendons. "36 times in both directions. Or you can simply create gentle pressure on the space if you're having lower back pain. Stomach 36. Just on the outside in the belly of this musculature. Spleen 9 up in here, just at the top of the bone, in that cave there, that soft space. This stomach 36 point can be useful for breast health as well, again, because it's in the line of the same channel that runs through the breast. Stomach 34 is a little bit more specifically angled for it. And then gallbladder 34 on the side here. That's another one that's wonderful for tension on the rib side, but also for breast health. And you can allow your thumbs to move a little bit further down below spleen 9 for this if you'd like. To a point called spleen 8, just a few inches below, body inches. And then gentle, soft circles, taking your time. Allow your breath to be easy, your hips to be soft so that your knees can soften, your lower back can release. Warmth and comfort soaking into that area. Let's do 36 in both directions. Breaking up the legs, softening the tissue around the knee. Gently allowing your hip to open. Don't allow pressure to accumulate in your knee if you're copying this posture. But you can sit in any posture that you like that helps you reach into this space in the calf. Relieving the Achilles, emphasizing that point in the center of the calf. 36 gentle circles around. But as you relieve it, you can also soften this channel again in the front. This is the stomach channel again here, which can often relate to breast health in Chinese medicine. You take your time. And again, especially if you have, for any insane reason, decided to spend time in high heels, first of all, please stop. Second, soften your calves, relieve this area, allow the Achilles to lengthen again and to release all of that pressure that's winding up, accumulating in your back.
Unless they enjoy high heels.
Unless you enjoy high heels and shortened Achilles tendons. And then soften the ankles. Yeah. I don't want anybody to do anything or dress in any way based on my opinions. I just want people to feel better. I've treated too many conditions of knee, hip, and back pain because people have to work in these high heels. I spend a lot of time treating people in the dancing community many of whom will wear heels. This point here, again, speaking of breast health, this distance above the inner ankle, just the distance across your knuckles here. Just a few body inches upward, 3 tsun up. That soft space, we want to release it. So you can even focus on it more specifically, gently with your fingertips or your palm, or again with that gentle rolling movement, if that helps. And especially if you're having a painful period, or if you are past the time of having periods, this can become something that is nourishing for that aspect of your system that is more quiet.
We have a question. What are body inches?
Oh, body inches. In Chinese, they're called sun. It's usually spelled C-U-N. But the idea is that, let's say there's 9 inches between my wrist and my elbow. But if I am really, really tall, I play for the American basketball teams, and my body inches are now, this distance is now from here to here, but we still say it has 9 body inches. And so the body inches grow larger. And I'm a very small person, perhaps a child, or just a person that has smaller proportions. Maybe that 9 inches is divided between here and here, but it's still considered 9. And so those sun are smaller. And that allows us to talk about the body in general ways, but still account for all the different kinds of body types. It's a really useful style of measurement. It's also used in Japanese carpentry, but without all the flexibility. Let me know if that answers the question. So you also want to make sure to soften down here. And again, just speaking of breast health, since that's partially the theme for the day, this point here, liver 3, just up between these 2 tendons, between the big toe and the second toe. Allow that to become soft and warm and open. Again, during times of especially painful periods, along with spleen 6, you might want to spend time gently circling and massaging just this point, stimulating it as an acupressure method that can often be very relieving. Or if you're experiencing a lot of frustration, anger issues, this is another wonderful point for that. Just a good point in general.
My favorite part.
Always taking the time to relieve these areas. Take as much time as you need. Warming and softening. Sweeping down the outside, up the inside, from your lower back, allowing everything to sweep and rest down, drawing up. Nice socks.
Awesome socks.
Awesome socks. Ah. Circling all the way around up to your hips. Again, you can use your hands if that helps, circle. But you do want to be flexing your toes, rolling your ankles. Resting for just a couple of minutes. If you'd like to lie flat, you're welcome to. Posture. Eventually, when you sit, you can become so soft that your whole body just falls to the ground, and it's as though the ground holds you up. Another minute of softening, releasing. Your breath deepens because you release anything that is holding it constrained, making space by letting go. Your mind softens because you release the tension in your mind that forces it away, forces it to leap around. Softening the mind, releasing distractions by letting go, making space. A spacious mind is a quiet mind. And that's one last piece worth talking about with the breast tissue health. As anyone here knows that has breast tissue, that aspect of our body, as all aspects of our body, are strongly impacted by mental, emotional stress and strain. And by learning to become soft, emotionally, mentally, our bodies release, our nervous system, as we were saying, slows down. this has a very powerful effect on every aspect of our system, including breast tissue health. Thank you all for joining us. You are very much appreciated. I'll answer a few questions, but for those of you that have to zip away, thank you for joining. So Mel's question was about the belly circles and why we expand out before coming in. This is a common question that in this case relates to all of this energy that we have been accumulating in the center. We want to soften and allow it to spread through our internal organ structure, to spread through our abdomen. And so we have an overall impact of genuinely, gently circling outward.
Outward being clockwise.
And
the top.
In this case, any direction is okay, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. There is a whole discussion about the hand position, which hand is on your belly, which part of you circles which direction. And these are about nourishing yang or yin, allowing some aspect of you to flow more outward than inward. And this creates balance and harmony for people who bleed every month, for instance. They may need to nourish blood more often. And so we emphasize directions that help to strengthen those particular qualities. For people who don't bleed, or maybe they work too hard and qi deficiency is a greater problem, we tend to emphasize those, or there are warming directions, these kinds of things. But I think that they make a really small difference, and so it's not worth worrying about. Simply taking the time to soften, and later getting in touch with those details can be helpful. But in the short term, it's better with this one just to have the sense of slow expansion and a gentle return. And that's the main feel. Does that answer the question? Okay, good. Sure.
Do you need me to repeat the other question from earlier?
About the rebounder?
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah, the rebounder, again, like anything, it's like asking about the treadmill. Is the treadmill good for circulation? And the first answer, as always within medicine, is the annoying answer, which is, it depends. It depends how you use it. Depends how long you use it. Depends on your body type. It depends on, if you're rebounding, for instance, the size of your rebound, the strength of your legs, the health of your joints, whether or not you're hydrated, if you're doing it instead of sleep, if you're jumping and juicing yourself up on caffeine and then literally jumping for an hour too long, longer than your body can handle, then all it does is create inflammation, which gets in the way of lymphatic flow. And so I believe that probably that literature on the health of the lymphatic system was paid for by whoever sells the rebounders. And the same way that a glass of wine every day is good for heart health. Spoiler, not really. And you always have to follow the money for these kinds of literature. Research and data is its own wonderful world of study. It's something Melanie and I are fascinated with. Lateral research to find out what's true and where the studies come from, who pays for it, what is the quality of the data, what is this style of statistical analysis. All of this makes a difference. This gets into very nerdy territory, and so I'm happy to talk about it at some point, but the biggest piece of that kind of stuff is probably it's useful for people if you're not moving, and if people enjoy it, then it can be a really fun form of exercise for people, as long as, like with any exercise, they do enough and not too much, and that they are in a healthy place in their lives where exercise is actually good for them, because not everybody is. And so that's my general vague answer for the internet. And I hope it is helpful. Let me know if I answer the question. Oh, thanks, Delores. What? Michelle was here. How wonderful. Anna, thank you so much. Everybody's so great. Chris was here. Steph was here.
Del made
a view. What did he say?
He said, just dropping in to say hi on lunch right now. Wanted to say happy practice, everyone. I am loving this so far, feeling my body gradually soften.
I'm so
Hope
glad.
y'all are noticing changes too.
Yeah, and as well, like Del was saying, if you are also with this regular practice noticing changes over the time, please do let us know. Tell other people about it in the comments so that they can feel encouraged to continue their practice, because it's such a subtle, comfortable thing. And this commitment of 100 days of doing something just gentle, loving, and calm, that can be a lot. Probably if I told people to do 100 days of those ice baths we were talking about, or 100 days of slapping yourself in the face while memorizing Shakespeare, like, people will do strange things. But the hardest thing, the most difficult thing to get people to do is to be moderate, to be gentle and kind and present and consistent. For some reason, that is the biggest hurdle of all in the clinic. And so I so much appreciate all of you for coming and joining and taking part. Thank you for being you. And thank you, Mel, for being you in the background.
Anytime.
Any other questions before we zip out of here?
A comment from Chris. He says, right, it claims to move every cell in the body and great for the lymph system. It seems like it would be great for elderly and sick people if its claims are true.
It could be. I think, again, it depends on the elderly sick person. What are we talking about? And there's a lot of things that move every cell in the body, including a car crash. And I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody either. So yeah, just be careful with what people say, because who's going to test that? It's just one of those claims that people make. And probably somewhere in the back of it, it says, this claim not, researched by whatever your federal level. Hopefully you have something that is testing those things. And so, yeah, just be very careful with those kinds of things. But all that being said, I think it's probably a just fine exercise if people enjoy it and it feels good. And speaking of breast health, by the way, it might be helpful for movement if people are kind of doing this kind of movement while they're doing it. But again, people with heavier breast material, heavier breast tissue, then their breasts are moving in such a way that it can aggravate all of this tissue up here and cause strain. And so, again, it depends on the person. And so always be careful. Diagnosis is the central part of medicine. Water can be really good for you, obviously. Water can kill you if you drink too much of it. And so anything can be a poison, dependent upon dosage, dependent on who's taking it. We always have to know why we're doing something and to listen to our bodies. And so I can't just give general information out, but we do want to know how to listen in order to be good advocates for ourselves and our own health. You too can advocate for yourself because we love you. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your practice.